So when we do a prayer walk, we're praying over the landscape. We're praying for the plants and the animals, and we're praying for the human beings. And because we walk in silence, we're not talking to each other. My uncle instituted that rule, and I keep that rule because when I first started helping him, the first walk I did, the first mile, all he heard was people talking about work and talking about their problems and talking about this and ignoring the very thing that they showed up to pray for. They were focused on themselves. And then he said, you know what? You're going to tell them they can't talk to each other. That's going to force them with their eyes to look at nature, to hear nature, and it's going to force them to consciously think and prayer, whether that's a singing prayer, whether that's they're in a meditative state and in their prayer, and it's going to force them to actually connect and focus in that prayer. And he gave them assignments, like what at the end he would always ask, what did you hear? What did you see? And then based on their answers, he could tell that they weren't in prayer
Mm.
because, yeah, they weren't trying to connect. And, those multi-day prayers, by the end of the last few days, you could tell they went from thinking of all these random thoughts to then to actively being in prayer and observing nature. The people that you have at the day one aren't the same at day 7. And when you're walking 20 miles a day and you're in the hot sun and you're in those elements, it kind of like strips those layers from you. And then it really brings you into um, the moment.
How long do those walks last? It's
It
multi?
depends.
Yeah.
It's we've done 2-day prayer walks because that's what it called for. We've done 7-day prayer walks. We've done 5-day prayer walks. We've done usually the 5 days have been like over 100 miles, the 7 days up to 120 miles over that time period because it really, when you think about it, when you're physically exhausted, when you're physically and mentally exhausted, you've kind of like that onion, you've peeled off all those layers to get to the heart. You're at a place where you're connecting on a different level versus if you just come and join for a mile or two. When you've done that entire prayer walk and you've got the blisters on your feet, you've you learned how to function as a group. You're more connected with each other as individuals and um keeping that prayer line going. It's like a ley line. It's like an
Yeah.
energy line. So focusing, and that's what we've put forth too, is that you have to focus that energy because if you're strong in your focus in your prayer and your positive thought, the person that is the flag bearer, the person all the way up front, you're like recharging that person. But when your mind wanders and you're feeling sad and you have angry thoughts, that person at that front of that line starts to feel angry. They start to feel exhausted. They start to drag, and then that staff starts getting very heavy. So and being the facilitator of because in my culture, a female can't be the flag bearer. You have to have a man. But if you don't have a flag bearer, then yeah, you can be at the front of that line. But if you're having a flag bearer, it has to be a man, and it has to be a native man, whether it's your tribe or of another tribe. And because they're carrying and it has to be who you choose has to be one that has that heart to do it because they have to walk the entire walk. They don't have the luxury to say, oh yeah, I'm tapping out. They're there from start to finish, and so it can be very intense.